Okay, so thank you for joining the session on the positive intersection between neurodiversity and mountain biking. We've got two presentations today, Esther Walker and Scotty Cornish. Esther has a PhD in cognitive science from University California, San Diego, and has since found her way to Outride. You'll have heard this morning on the great panel that she uses cycling to help the youth become happier and healthier through cycling. So Esther's going to talk, and we'll take questions from Esther for 10 minutes after her presentation. And then Scotty. Scotty Cornish has lots of tools in his toolbox. He's a neurodiversity educator, health and performance coach. He's a writer, photographer, and athlete. And we're going to hear about Scotty's personal journey with neurodiversity. So yeah, we'll take questions following each presentation. And then if we have time, have a wider discussion at the end. Feel free to pop questions in the app if they pop into your head during the talks. I'll keep an eye, but we'll have a good conversation after each presentation. So to start, Esther, can you tell us all about Outride and your work? I'll take yes, I forgot the first stage.
All right. Make sure I have this on. All right, here we go. Can you hear me okay in the back too? Yep. Are you running for something? All right. Thank you all for having me. I feel like I can probably skip the first 5 minutes of my presentation now because I just introduced myself a little bit earlier. But I'm really excited to be here learning with you all. It's already been such a great conference, and so I think inspiring to see so many similar themes happening at this conference and being able to apply that to our work back in North America. And I think for this session, it's really interesting. I don't want to deceive you all in terms of kind of what I'll be talking about, but our organization, Outride, I think is a great example of the positive intersection between mountain biking and neurodiversity. I won't be touching on it at extreme lengths today, but I will go over a little bit of the history of how it really kind of sparked our larger programs and initiatives within North America. I will also want to add that, I don't know if you can all see this image very clearly, but someone asked me, why are you picking that image? Isn't this the IMBA summit? And so I think, I picked this for a couple of reasons. The first is that I know they're not riding on some epic downhill, and there's reasons for that. They may get to that later. But really just to showcase kind of that, really how we've kind of approached what it means to be mountain biking and kind of exploring nature and the environment really takes a lot of different, it looks a lot of different ways across the programs that we work with. So I also want to start with some, movement here, not the rabbit finger thing. I'm not going to test you today, but maybe before I talked this morning, how many of you had heard about Outride? Okay, so we got a good mix here. So again, I won't go into as much depth as I had planned because I gave you a mini intro earlier, but for those of you who weren't familiar, we are a nonprofit organization. Really, our mission is to empower all people to experience those social, emotional, and cognitive benefits that can come from riding a bike. Of course, we know there are amazing physical health benefits as well, but we're really focused on those additional impacts of cycling, on that power to build community, social cohesion, confidence, support mental health, and as well as brain health. And this is really at the core of all of what we work on. And we do this, as I had mentioned earlier, through our three main program areas. So the first is research, which, as we'll see, it's always been kind of at the root of what we do. We both collaborate and support research on the impacts of cycling on these domains. And really motivated by the results of this work, we have really focused on increasing access to cycling so that everyone can experience those benefits that can come with riding a bike. And we do that both through our school-based programs that, again, as of now, are mostly focused across the US and Canada, as well as our community impact grants. And again, while this has mostly been in the past focused on youth, we are expanding to really kind of go back to our original mission statement when we talk about all people. Expanding to different age ranges as well as internationally. So also starting some work with Dimmons and Bird Napier, which we're really excited to dive into as well. So today I'll actually be focusing mainly on our school programs and starting with a short history lesson for those of you who may not know a lot about kind of where this organization came from. And so some of you may be familiar with this face, but this is Mike Sinyard, and he is the founder of Specialized Bicycle Components. And that's really where this all began. Mike actually has ADHD, and he consistently noticed that he felt more focused and energized after riding. Anyone who works with him closely, like you tend to want to have a morning meeting, and he'll say that himself, where he's a little bit more focused after a ride than say in the afternoon. And really early on, he wondered if there was any scientific evidence to back this up. And if so, what he could do to support getting ultimately more people riding to experience those benefits. And so really what happened early on is that Specialized, before there was any sort of formal organization, they commissioned a pilot study to really examine how a cycling program could impact learning, health, well-being of youth with ADHD. And the study really found that students who participated in this regular biking program, and early on it was a sample of 2 pilot schools just to see, is this feasible in a school setting? And they found that this regular biking program, they saw improvements in attention and mood, really positive reception from the parents and the teachers as well, but also really positive impacts on social cohesion as well. And I think in this initial program, I think what was important is that actually a lot of the feedback was they didn't necessarily want it to just be students with ADHD riding separately from the classes. They wanted it to be a cohesive experience where everyone could experience the benefits. And so today I'll be talking about kind of the broader impacts of the program, but also kind of taking away some key learnings that we had from those early days, focusing on youth with ADHD. I'll also say that in 2019, that's when we actually were renamed Outride. We were, previously with kind of the development of the studies and the school programs, the Specialized Foundation. But in 2019 began that transition from that private corporate foundation to a public charity, really with the idea that this is the potential to be a broader impact than just a single brand. And so with that came the acceptance that, hey, yes, Specialized is still going to be our anchor donor, but they actually invite us and welcome us to work with other brands and even competition, all in service of kind of getting more people riding to experience these benefits. So now I'm going to, I love data. I didn't answer the data question earlier, and I won't give you too much of it today, but I do want to start with a little bit of background. So this group, may be, familiar with some of the physical activity and physical exercise research, but if you don't, this infographic on the left, CDC, as it was in 2021, gave us a nice summary of the health benefits of physical activity for youth. And so many of you may be already familiar with a lot of those benefits, but what you might not also know is that more and more research has kind of shown the impact that physical activity and physical exercise can have on youth with ADHD, including improved attention and focus, improved executive function, so that's just a fancy way to talk about inhibiting impulses, you're ignoring distractions, things like that. And also some evidence in the scientific literature about improved emotional and behavioral outcomes as well. And because of this, it has been proposed as a possible option for those who maybe do not tolerate medication. The landscape of that in Europe may look a little bit different than in the US, or those who don't respond to these pharmaceutical options, or even just as a supplementary approach. And I think what's important to say here is that this is clearly going to be tailored to the individual. Many people may find that lifestyle variations, and I'm sure Scott can talk a little bit to this, can be useful. Others need a different combination. And so I think really at the root of all this, the goal is just to really recognizing that importance of getting your regular physical activity. And I think despite all of these known benefits, many of you might be familiar with the data as a global population, even though we're just showing the American data here, of the continuous decline of physical activity rates. And it's actually becoming quite alarming. And I think what's even more concerning is that youth with ADHD, this is just the general population, youth with ADHD actually tend to have even lower rates of physical activity and lower participation in team sports. And there are many reasons for this, which I can touch on later if you want to talk about it. But really, it points to the importance of finding activities that youth are motivated to participate in. Because I'm sure, as all you know, If you don't like it, you're not going to do it. And this is really important because, getting enough physical activity is really important, not only for our physical health, but our mental health as well. And in addition to this decline, I could show a similar chart for mental health outcomes for youth as well. And so this is where cycling comes in. I think a lot of times I'll present some of that early data and they're like, well, how did you get from that to cycling? And I think cycling is a really interesting activity because it can be formed individually, it can be performed in a group, it can be adjusted based on the skill set of the individual. You can perform it across the lifespan. You don't need 5 of your friends to make a team to try to play after school. It can be used for recreation and transportation, but also can provide this really important access to nature, which has inherent benefits to that as well. And I think what's importantly is, in these early studies, we just saw really high rates of student acceptance of the program. The number of them that were just saying we get to do this during the school day, they felt like they were getting away with something. It didn't feel like, oh, I'm just doing a standard sport. But the teachers felt they were tricking them because they're like, aha, you're still moving, right? You're still sweating. And so it's a really promising activity to kind of boost these physical activity levels. So in terms of what our program actually looks like, so we've called it Riding for Focus. Again, coming from those roots of that initial focus of working with students with ADHD. And it's often implemented during physical education. So again, like you do your basketball unit or your volleyball unit, or it'd be interesting to hear what it looks like here in Europe. They get to do a 6 to 8 week cycling unit. In some schools, this has gone on to now 14 weeks, full semester elective of cycling, mountain biking. And students get, I think the importance of that length is that students get the regular opportunity to practice. It's not just like a 1 hour, workshop, here you go, we taught you how to bike, good luck. They really get to practice their skills, really learn to ride with their peers, and really kind of develop a really love of that joy and community that can come with cycling. And so I'll also point out, because this is a mountain biking conference, is that we do focus on an introduction to riding safely and confidently, and that includes traffic safety skills. Mountain bikers also need to learn these skills, but they do all ride on a mountain bike. They all get the same bikes to ride during the school day, really allowing them to experience a wide range of terrains. And again, I think the last part that's important to mention here is that this program is prioritized to schools that are serving students from low-income communities. So they get any school that applies and receives the grant, they get a fleet of bikes that become the schools. The school owns the bikes. They get helmets, teacher training, and curriculum, and really this access to a wider network to kind of share their learnings and ideas from other people who have implemented the program. So just to give you a sense, maybe it's really hard to see there, the blue dots. We have implemented this program now over 400 middle schools across the US and Canada. And before I share more, I just want to share a really brief video of a little bit of kind of the student impact of the program and how what they're taking away from it. And I think the audio should come from here, but we'll find out.
The experience, the people that are in the group that we can all just ride bikes together, and just it's kind of like a time just to get away from school and maybe stress with homework and stuff. I feel like Outride is just a time to get away from it and just ride.
But when I get to go outside, it's really fun and it gives me a break. When I go back to 4th and 5th period, I used to be always dead shot tired. I couldn't focus. But after biking, I'm more energized. I'm able to focus till the end of the day.
I just like having the people around us. Mr. Blood, super helpful. My friends, they also make it fun. That's genuinely what I like about it.
So they can explain it a lot better than I, and I think it also gives you maybe a sense of the different types of terrains that the students are riding on. So you might see students riding on the road, on the running tracks, on beautiful trails, and I think the beauty of that is that each school is able to adapt it to their setting, all while kind of learning those basic skills as well. So I also just want to take a little bit of time to show you some additional examples of what this looks like across the US and Canada. So some schools are really lucky. They have beautiful trails right out the back door, and maybe this is what it's like in Boltaña here as well. So whether they're in the desert, the mountains, or the city, they learn the basic skills and they progress on to be able to ride on these beautiful trails. Other areas, and maybe they might use trails later on, but they might not have immediate access. So they work with what they have. This could look like a basketball court, a tennis court, a running track, a soccer field. And important here is that they use what they have to develop the skills. So they may be throwing out pool noodles, they may be throwing out used helmet boxes, things like that to give them a little bit of structure. And then a lot of the schools will work towards, once they've really built the skills of the students, go on a field trip to explore an area maybe they've never seen in their city before that they can now apply their new skills to. Other schools, especially in urban areas, also learn to ride on the roads. And this has actually been a really great way for the schools to build community connections. They'll see kind of this whole row of students. Some schools have them all wearing the yellow vests. And then all the neighbors come out of the houses. It's like, Mr. Rogers, they're like waving at the students as they go by. And so it's a really great way to create that connection and curiosity from the community. And others will actually find, natural features. This is actually a downtown, urban square. And that's the only place they could practice shifting. And the students had a really hard time learning the skill until one of the students actually said, hey, if we go up this little rise, we can actually, practice that skill. So they get really creative in terms of what they're able to use to develop those skills. And this is fresh data from the last couple of years. I think this is just a subset of 89 schools from the past couple of cohorts, not including our Canadian data. And I think what's really important here is that one of the key benefits of working with schools is that we're reaching the school population. The standard population of the U.S. Youth population looks exactly like this. So we get a pretty even gender split. The racial and ethnic distribution here actually pretty closely matches that of U.S. youth under 18. On the school setting, the Social Vulnerability Index, this is a CDC measure. You may not be familiar with it, but basically the higher the vulnerability is, these tend to correspond to lower socioeconomic status areas as well, among other factors. And so again, in line with our prioritization of the grant, those tend to be the schools that we're serving. And I think what's also really interesting is that we have a pretty even split across these locale types. So like I mentioned earlier, pretty even split between the city and the rural, less so on the suburban side because those also tend to be higher socioeconomic status in the US. Let's see. I don't want to take up too much more time here, but I have so much data I could share, so I'm happy to dive into that with you all after. But this is just to say that the program is really strongly received by both the students and the teachers. Now, of course, I would love this to be 100%, but what we do know is that we can't please everyone. Some students are like, nah, biking ain't for me. However, they often do express that they're glad they learned the skill because I don't know how many of you have seen, but more and more middle schoolers are actually not learning to ride at home. So we usually are working with ages 11 to 14, and teachers are often, again, shocked that, I had no idea that students just aren't learning to ride at home anymore. And so this program provides that opportunity. One other piece of data I'd like to share with you all, because I've seen it come up across this conference, is that we were just curious, before we even introduced the program, given the large scale of data, I think this is actually 12,000 people, I may have cut that off there. We see year over year consistent associations between how frequently students report riding outside of school and their mental well-being score, here measured by the WHO-5 Wellbeing Index, which is a 5-question, super short, validated measure of mental well-being. And what we've done is we've looked at it every way we can. We've incorporated gender, the different schools, socioeconomic status, their physical activity levels. And no matter what, we still see this association. So, our data here can't tell us why that is. We do have some qualitative data that will be interesting to dive into. I have ideas, but I think it's something that, a lot of these programs here have been finding as well. So we're curious to dive into that as well. From a teacher's perspective, and I think this kind of brings it back to, what we were talking about earlier, students, a lot of the teachers working with students with ADHD or students on IEP plans within the US, many teachers comment on how cycling has really been like revolutionary for these students. Students who have tended to be disengaged during PE, not interested in team sports, not interested in socializing with others. Cycling has unlocked a way for them to communicate with their peers and really interact with them on a level playing field. We also have amazing stories of teachers who said, another teacher sent me this student, they're badly behaved, difficult, nothing's going to come from them. They went through the biking program and they are actually now leading. They are allowed to get out of class and lead the bike classes for other students, really giving them leadership in a way that they weren't really seen before in their class. And again, I think, I know I'm a little bit over time here, but these are, inclusive environment for all students recommendations that some of our teachers have put together. But I think really it's not just for the students with ADHD and neurodiverse youth, but really this is going to be beneficial for all students, really focusing on a strengths-based approach. What are, each of these students good at and giving them each a role. And we actually have one teacher who's taken that to the next level. She's like, I can't possibly manage 30 students at once. They all have, different needs. And what she did is she worked with the students to give each of them a job, giving them some structure. So one is like the weather reporter, one leads the ride, one's the sweep, one does GoPro videos, really playing to each student's strengths and really kind of coming together in a beautiful way to make this class really meaningful beyond just the bike. One last thing I'll share before I wrap it up here is I think I talked a little bit about this, but it's cool to see it in action, is that introducing students to this program during the school day gives them a little bit of experience with the bike. But then so many of them, they want to do more. And they ask their school, they ask their teachers, hey, I haven't seen anyone on that baseball field for 2 years. Can we dig in it? Can we play on it? And the teacher said yes. And so they were allowing the students to work with the dirt and some adult supervision to build some features. They also, in the school in Florida, worked with the community and the students to design trails. They even got to name them. I don't think we can see them quite there, to really have kind of these community and family dig days. All the way to other cases like in Michigan, where they worked with trail builders to actually say, hey, our students love this so much, we're gonna go fully invested, get blue, red, green, black trails around our school system. And that also allows them to participate in things like NICA. So again, I think obviously there's a lot we can learn from this program. Again, it's not perfect, and we continue to evolve it every day every year based on the feedback we get from teachers and the community. But I think these are some really key components for long-term sustainability of these programs. One is really planning for ongoing training for educators and those who are going to implement the program, because they are really going to be the key drivers moving this forward in a community. I can't overstate the importance of equipment storage and maintenance, really thinking about where are these bikes coming from, where are they going to live, who's going to maintain them to make sure that those are ready for the students to ride each day. I would also say, again, here, I know we've talked a lot about, the amazing trails here, which are beautiful, but we've had to get creative in the U.S. About, where students can ride. And with time, we would love to see, work with IMBA, and, every school also kind of gets to work on a trail around their school. We're not there yet, but it really has allowed them to get creative, to build the skills, so then when they do come to a place like this, they're able to experience it. And then this last piece, I think, has been really important. We are one organization. We focus on pretty specific things. And so the more we're able to collaborate and combine forces with other organizations to really provide whole ecosystems of support has been really a powerful way for us to move forward. And I'll leave this all to you all, but I would love to hear from you all. Is there similar work being done in your communities? If not, would something like this work? How would it need to be adapted? And what might this look like? And I'm asking you that because we are really interested in collaborating and learning from you all, recognizing that what we have built up in the States won't necessarily work elsewhere, and people are already doing great work. So we'd rather work together than to rebuild. So thank you.